In this episode we are going to be doing a lot of things. So we are going to learn about static routes, about nested routes. We are going to create a navigation component which we are going to connect to our Strapi backend. Also you are going to learn about a link component that comes with Next. And we are going to learn how to use getInitialProps with app.js file. So no time to waste, let's get going. Next.js has a file system based routing built on concept of pages. And I already showed you how this works by building an about page. So if we go to an about route, we get to I'm an about page. Okay, so if we want to create another page, we just go into pages and create a new file here, which we are going to call contact.js. In it, we are just going to return text. This is a contact page. Like this. Save this, go to our browser, and now if I go to contact, I get this is a contact page. Great, so this is just a normal static page that you would have in your Next.js application. So let's talk about nested routes or nested pages for that matter. So let's say we have a blog on our site, and in that blog we want to have a blog list, and we also want to have all the blog posts, and we want to have those routes to be blog. When we go to blog, we get a blog list, and when we go to blog slash the name of the post, we get that blog post, right? Pretty simple. So how do you do that in Next.js? Well, we would just go to our code editor, and inside of pages, we would create a new folder and call it blog. Now, how do we get a blog list? Well, very easily. You just add index.js file inside of a blog folder. So I'm just going to call this index.js. Right? And in it, we can just put something like this, right? And this is going to say I'm a blog post list. Save it, check it in the browser. So if I just go to blog, I don't have to go to blog index, just go to blog. I will get I'm a blog post list. Great. So of course, this is just an example of if you had a blog that is coming from Strapi, for example, then of course you would use dynamic routes. You wouldn't use the static routes, but we are not going to talk about dynamic routes in this episode. We are going to talk about them in the next episode. But for now, this is just an example to show you how nested routes work. So if I want to have a blog post that is going to have a route of blog and then the name of the post, I would just go again into my code editor, and also inside of a blog, I would create a file called my blog post, for example. And in it, I would just put this. So I'm a blog post. Save it. If we go to our browser, and now if we go to blog, my blog post, as you can see, we are getting that blog post. So this is how you create normal static routes and nested routes in your Next.js application. So now let's create a navigation menu for our site. We are going to put it in the header right of our logo. So to create navigation menu, we are going to create a navigation component, of course inside of components directory, and I'm going to call it navigation.js. Okay, in it, I'm just going to paste this in. So this is just a boilerplate for our components. We just got function navigation styled. I already have some styles right here. We are not going to go into that. And we are, of course, importing emotion styled. Great, so this is our beginning point of our navigation. So let's save this. And now we are going to go to header.js and add that navigation to our header. But before that, I'm just going to write navigation here, just so that we have something to display on the page. We go to header.js. And first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import flex and box from Reflexbox and refactor our header a little bit like we learned in the last episode where we covered Reflexbox. So first of all, I'm going to, instead of this container right here, I'm going to add a box with the variant of container, right? So this is going to be our container. Next thing I want to do is, of course, I want to import navigation. So we are importing it from components navigation, and I'm going to put it right here below the logo. Okay, now I want a logo and navigation to be inside of a flex box so that the logo will be on the left side and the navigation would be on the right side. So we are justifying content to be space between, aligning on items to be center, and I think that's about it. So this is our refactor of header.js. If I save this, go to our browser, now we can see that we have next movies and we have navigation. Great. So we are going to create our navigation right here. We are just going to link those pages that we created just a second ago. So our blog, about page, and our contact page. Now in our navigation.js, I'm going to import a link from Next.link. So this is a link component that is used to linking your internal pages together. When you are going to outside of your site, so you want to link to Google, for example, you don't need to use this. But when you're linking to the internal pages of Next.js, be that dynamic routes or static routes, you should be using this link component. So we are going to create a UL tag here. In it, I'm going to create an li tag. And now in here, I want to create a link. So we are going to use a link component. So link is a little bit weird to set up, right? So you add an href to the link. So when we want to link to about page, we would do it like this. Right? So we add href to about, then we add an a tag without an href, and in it we just write some text. So since this is going to be an about page, we are just going to say about. Okay, save this, go to our browser, and as you can see we have an about link right here, and if I click it, I go to an about page. Great. So this works. Let's create two more links for contact and blog. So kind of like this. Save it, check it out. As you can see, now we have about, blog. Okay, I didn't do that very well, so this should be contact. Now we have about, blog, contact, and if we click OK, so we are on about page. If we click blog, we are on blog post page, and if we click contact, we are on contact page. Now, of course, as you can see, we don't see on which page we are very easily through our navigation menu because it doesn't give us any visual feedback about that. So we are going to have to add some logic that is going to say, so when you're on about page, make this link be a different color, for example, so that the user knows that they are on about page. So first of all, we are going to import useRouterHook from NextRouter, and we are going to use this to get the current path of our page. So if I go right here and do something like, so I'm using the router and then I'm console logging that router so that we can see it in our console. Let's save this, check it out. So if I open up my console in my browser, as you can see, this is our router. And as you can see right here, we have path name of about, route is about, you have queries and so on. We are going to talk a little bit more about this when we cover dynamic routes. But for now, we have this path name. So we can compare that path name to the href that we are linking to. And then we can calculate on which page we currently are. To do that is very simple. So if we go down here, you can see that we have an active class. So we want to add an active class to our link when this href is equal to the path name from our router. So what we are saying right here, if the router path name is equal to about, then add a class name of active to this link. So if I save this, go to my browser. As you can see, about is now this orange color, so we know we are on about page. Of course, it doesn't work for blog or contact just yet because we didn't add that logic to those links, but we will add it right away. So like this, if we save it, check it out. As you can see, contact is currently the active page. If I click on blog, blog is active page. If I click on about is an active page. So pretty simple, right? So next thing we want to do is actually get those routes and get that navigation from our Strapi backend, right? So since we have a backend, why should we need to hard code all of those links in here? We can just define them in the backend and then print them out here. But before we do that, I just want to go to my header.js file. And since we know how to use link, we first need to import it. And here I just want to wrap this image and this span inside of a link component, so when somebody clicks on our logo, we would go to the front page of our site. Like this. And after that, I'm just going to refactor a CSS a little bit so that the logo looks a bit better. And as you can see now our logo looks like this. And if I click on it, I would just go to my front page, right? And of course, about, contact, blog still works. Okay, great. So now we are going to dynamically get all of the links for our navigation from Strapi. So you go to Strapi, you go to content type builder. We are going to create a new content type that we are going to call navigation. Click continue. And we are going to add 2 text fields. So the first one is going to be a title. And we are going to add another field. And this one we are going to call slug. Very simple. So you can make this navigation be more complicated. But for this example, we are just going to create a very, very simple navigation. Click finish. And now just click save. Now, as you can see, we have this navigations content type. If we go right here, I already created it. So as you can see, we have about, its title, and we have slug about. So for blog, we also have title blog, blog slug, just like we have currently hard-coded inside of our application. Great. Next thing you need to do, if you didn't do it already, you need to go to roles and permissions, go to public, and right here in navigation, you should click on find and find one. Just so that we have access to our navigations endpoint. Save this. And now if we go to localhost 1337 navigations, we are getting this. So we are getting our navigation, our main navigation. So about, contact, and blog. So we are going to take that data, put it inside of our application and generate our navigation from this, right? So that your users can just go to Strapi and add navigation to the pages themselves. When we created our homepage, we used this async function get server-side props. And that works okay for our front page. However, on your app.js page, or actually this is your whole application, you cannot, at least as of now, as of recording this video, you can't use get server-side props easily. And we are doing it here because we want our navigation to be available through our whole application, right? So we want to get all of that navigation data inside of this app.js page so that we have it through all of our site. However, we cannot use get server-side props here. We need to use get initial props. So I'm just going to do something like this. So my app get initial props. This is also an async function. And as you can see right here, we are not getting this process.env. But we are actually using this public runtime config.api URL and so on. Now we have to use this instead of process.env because get initial props runs on the server but also on the client. And if we use just process.env, that wouldn't work very well because on the client we don't have access to process.env. So we need to use this public runtime config. When you use public runtime config, the environment variables like API URL are going to be available on the client and on the server. However, this is not going to work by itself. First of all, we need to get the config, we need to get that public runtime config from getConfig, like this. And also we need to import getConfig from Next.config. So right here. Now this is still not going to work because we need to configure our Next.js config to get us this API URL environment variable. So we are going to go to our next config.js. And just like we added this process.env, we can just add public runtime config like this. Also define API URL, and we can actually extract it from process.env API URL, or we are going to extract this variable from our .env variable that we created in one of the previous videos. So you need to do that, save it, and of course you need to restart your server. I'm just going to quit out of this and then run npm run dev again. So now that our server has started, we can go back to our code editor. As you can see, we are returning navigation right here, and just to see if it works, we can console log that navigation here in my app. But first of all, of course, we need to destructure it from our props. So we just add navigation right here, and then we try to console log out navigation. Save this, go to our browser. Okay, so the fetch is not defined. We get that error because we didn't import fetch from isomorphic unfetch. Let's just correct that quickly. So you need to import it here, save this. Let's now check it out. Okay, so this works. Let's check out our console. So here, this is our array. Let me make it bigger. So as you can see, we are getting the data that we need. So the title about, slug about, and so on. So we are now getting the data from our server about our navigation. So now we need to prop drill that navigation data through our header and into our navigation. Not the prettiest way of doing things, but it will work in a pinch. And actually, since we are just prop drilling through two components, that shouldn't be a problem. So we go to our app.js file, and for this header component, we define a new prop and just call it navigation. And we are going to send this navigation into our header. Great. Now save this. We go to our header. We need to destructure the props so that it receives navigation like this. And now we need to send this navigation to our actual navigation, right? To this component. So the same thing as we did in app.js. So navigation equals navigation. Great. So now our navigation data is coming to our navigation component. Save it. And now we go to our navigation component, destructure our props so that we get that navigation. Okay. So now that we are getting our navigation data to our navigation component, we can remove all of this. And instead of that, just loop through our navigation array and then display the pages that way so that we don't have to hard code them inside of this component. So we are going to map through navigation. Inside it, I'm going to put an li tag, which is going to have a key. Of course, we need to add a key. So the key is going to be the item ID, since we are getting the ID from all of our navigations. Then inside of this, we are going to define our link component. And the href on that link component is going to be the slug that we are getting from Strapi. Okay, now inside it, we need to define an a tag. That a tag is going to display the item title. And let's just check out if all of this works before we add that active link, not active link logic. So let's just save this, go to the browser. And as you can see, we have about, contact, and blog still working. Let's refresh it just for good measure. Click on about. So this works, contact works, blog works, but now all of those links are not hard coded. They're coming from Strapi. So let's just go right here and add that logic for displaying the active link. It's going to be just a little bit different now because we are of course not going to hard code the href. So we are just going to say root path name is equal to item slug. And if it's equal, then set active class. If it's not equal, don't set anything. Save this, check it out. And as you can see, blog is already set to be active. If I click on contact, works, about works. If I click here, we go to our front page. Okay, so this has been it for this video. Remember, everything we did here will be available for you on GitHub. The link will be in the description below. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.